Welcome back to Houdini 101. My name is Jared, and in the first episode of this little mini series, we took a look at the UI and navigation in SideFX Houdini. We learned some about hotkeys and viewport navigation, and even did some UI customization. So if you missed that episode, first and foremost, go back and watch it because it was a good one. The link will be in the card, I believe, up here, but wherever it shows up. In this episode, we're going to go about importing some complex geometry into our scene. There are quite a few ways to do this, and we're going to learn a lot in the process. So without further ado, let's get started. Here we are back in SideFX Houdini, and to begin this episode, we need to learn a couple more things about the UI and navigation, specifically as it relates to objects, seeing as how that's what we're going to be working with in today's episode. So the first thing I'm going to do is come over to my network view, and I'm going to hit tab, and I'm going to drop in a cube. This drops in this box, and the main thing that we need to learn about here is the display tag. And you're going to hear me say the term display tag a lot, and what I mean is when you hover over a node in Houdini that has a visual property, this display tag pops up, allowing you to toggle the object on and off. Now, when we're in a geometry view, and let's say you have both a box and a sphere, you can only have one of these objects visible at the same time. So when I say I'm moving my display flag to an object, it means that I'm making it visible. And that's just done by hovering over any object and setting the display/render tag. If you want to see a wireframe of another object while your display tag is on another object, you can come over here and set this little template tag. And if I scale down my box a little bit, you'll see we have this wireframe of our sphere coming through when this little pink tag is on it. It may seem a little complicated at the moment, but we're going to kind of demystify it as we go. So let's get into importing geometry. Firstly, I want to just show you what I'm going to be importing. So I'm going to make my product ad out of this model from CG Axis. It's just a pair of AirPods Max, and so there's a lot of smoothness going on here. There's a lot of different parts in this model, and so this is what I mean when I say complex geometry. It's not necessarily, insane by any means, but this is, fairly hard in a program like Houdini to separate out into layers if you're working with something like an FBX or an OBJ. So to go about importing geometry, there's going to be a couple of different ways to do it in Houdini, but for the sake of this video not going too long, I need to keep it to the method that I'm going to be using, which is using an FBX file and importing via filmbox FBX. Now you can also import just a geometry file. You can use a file node if you are familiar with either of those methods. But for me in this tutorial, we're going to go to File, Import, and we're going to go to Filmbox FBX. And so you can see here that we have a lot of options, and we can leave them all the same. The main thing that we need to do here is tell Houdini where to look for our file, for our geometry. So I'm going to select my model, which is this CG Axis AirPods model from my project folder. And like I said, we're looking for an FBX file format here. So when you're downloading your models, look for FBX. And we're going to click Accept and then Import. And now if I scroll way out, we have this huge rendition of our geometry here in our scene. And you can see that Houdini has created a subnetwork for us. And this is why I wanted to use this method of importation, is because we can let Houdini do some of the heavy lifting for us. So if we dive into this network by selecting it and hitting I, you can see that what Houdini has done is taken our FBX file and separated it out into its individual parts, almost like they're layers. And it's done this for us and really brought them all in to one place. This is very helpful for a model like this where I don't have a UV texture and I need to texture each of these parts individually. This is a big deal for us. Now, while this is very helpful in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't help us a ton right now because all we have are these parts individually. We don't have any one object in a network that is able to be kind of animated like this. So we have, because this is a subnetwork, we are still technically not at the object level of these things. You can dive into each one of these and see that there is an individual file node for each part. So what we want to do is use all of these layers that Houdini has given us and combine them into one file on our own so that we can then take that and run simulations with it, use it in animations, but still retain all of these layers so that they can be textured individually later. So how do we go about that? First, we need to hit U on our keyboard to dive up from that view. I am going to toggle off the display on this model that was brought in. I'm also going to make it not selectable so that this is basically just not even here for all of our intents and purposes. I'm going to hit tab on my keyboard and I'm going to type geo, which is going to give me geometry here at the top. I'm going to click that. You can also click enter. And I'm just going to drop a new geometry node into our scene. Now this is going to basically house all of the objects that we need to combine into our final model. So you can see that this is just a piece of geometry. This is not a subnetwork like what we've created up here. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to rename this to headphone underscore out. And this is going to be our output for our headphones that we can use in our animation later. I'm going to hit I on my keyboard to dive into this headphone out node. Now we're going to utilize a very, very powerful node in Houdini that lets us draw in geometry that's already in our project file somewhere, but not actually in our current network. That node, if you press tab, is called Object Merge, and it'll just come up very quickly here. And we can drag these in. Now, if we come up into our object merge node and we tell Houdini with this file picker what we want, we're going to want to come into this subnetwork that our filmbox FBX imported and choose not this top one here, because this, you can see by the icon, is an empty null object. You're going to want to pick these that have actual geometry icons beside them. So I'm going to pick the top one here and click accept. And you'll see that we've imported our first very small piece of geometry. Mine just happens to be very small. Yours might be, you know, the primary thing in your model or whatever. But for me, it was just this little small piece that got imported into the new network. But you can see this is a start. Now, there are ways with object merge. You can see that you can set it to import a different number of objects, but that's actually not what I'm going to want to do for this for our texturing purposes later. So I'm going to hit U on my keyboard, and what we need to do is come back into this subnetwork and figure out how many different pieces of geometry we have here. And in my case, that is 9, it looks like. So what I want to do is go back into my headphone out network, and I need 9 object merge nodes so that I can bring all those different pieces of geometry in individually. You'll want to create however many pieces you need in your object merge. So I went ahead and quickly created a bunch of object merge nodes. I have not actually wired these up yet. What I want to show you is that with any sort of node layout, even if these were all connected and set up, at any time you can hit L on your keyboard in the object network and Houdini will automatically lay out these nodes for you. So now I'm going to do the same thing that we did with the first object merge, and I'm going to come into these and open the different pieces of geometry. So with all of those individually linked, I can now move my display flag around, and you'll see as I do so that all of these different pieces are in here individually. And I can even hold shift and click my template flags so that I'll get wireframes of everything in here together. But having them all be their own piece of geometry that can't really connect together is no better than what we had in the subnetwork that the filmbox FBX created. Well, now that we're in an actual geometry node and not in a network, what we can do is hit tab and bring in a merge node. And this is going to be a very powerful node that is going to allow us to then select all of these pieces of geometry that we've brought in and connect them all at once into this merge node. And when I set my display flag, you will see that we have all of our geometry merged into one node here, which is exactly what we wanted. I'm going to hit L on my keyboard to arrange all of these. And now we can start to work on our object a little bit, just getting it prepared to do our animations and simulations and whatever else you want to do. So first things first, these are laying down on their side, and I want to rotate them up and then probably scale them down a lot, because even though Houdini is technically unitless, these imported fairly large. So now that we have this merge node and one piece of geometry, this is very easy. We're going to drop in a transform node, and that is going to do exactly what you would think it would do. We're going to have all of our transformation settings come up here in our parameters, and we can just connect our merge node directly to it, set our display flag to our transformation, and now we can transform our headphones or our geometry, whatever it is, however we want. So I'm going to rotate these on the axis that was necessary, and I'm going to scale it down to 0.1. And then I have these wireframes in here because I was showing you how to do some other stuff, but we just need our visual or our display flag on our main object now. So now we are exactly where we want to be. We have all of our layers in exactly how they should be, and they are merged into one object while retaining our ability to texture these individually with groups later. What we can do now is create a null and have this simply serve as an output. So this will just be, we'll call it HP underscore merged, and this will just be our output. So if I come back up here, you can see in our main object network that we have a beautiful headphone model all in and scaled and ready to go on whatever else we have for it. So this geometry is now set up appropriately to be able to do pretty much whatever we want with it. We can take this HP merged null into any network via another object merge node like we have up here, and then we can run simulations, do whatever, all outside of this messy tree here, and all of this is obviously completely procedural. So that was importing and setting up geometry. In the next episode, we're going to go into texturing this. So we've now got our geometry in, and it's time to go into texturing. And following that up, we will go into some lighting and animating. But this is a great start to creating a good product animation, is just having your geometry imported and set up well. And so we will just pick back up in the next episode. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you.